Hello, everybody. Those that keep the solar lunar celestial calendar, it is new moon day for the 10th month, and very good day today. I want to address some things. First of all, when I'm doing these videos, I'm not using a bunch of notes to read from and to tell you how to read scripture. Okay, Yahushua said that from the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks, and what goes in a man's mouth does not defile a man, but what proceeds out of his mouth. So I try to be very careful what I speak, and that I speak truth. And I don't want to indoctrinate anyone. I want to share some things that have been revealed and inspire anyone that hears to go and study them out for themselves. But hopefully, in hearing some of these things, you'll get a glimpse of some light and maybe be set free from some of the doctrines and dogmas of men. So when I began studying and realizing in Torah that we keep all of the feasts, and when the Messiah was crucified, he said, "It is finished." The Christian theology was that it's finished. We don't do anything. We can't do anything. We're not saved by works, therefore we don't do works. Well, Scripture says that we're judged by our works. And James said, "Show me works without faith. I'll show you my faith by my works." So just throw all that lawlessness doctrines in the garbage, and let's go back to reading Scripture and studying Scripture for what it is, and understanding what it is and what it is not. So last thing I would ever want to do is to gaslight any topic and to express that someone's not smart enough or intelligent enough to go search it out for themselves. And that's what many speakers do. They will say, "This light's been given to me, and you're not intelligent enough or not special enough to have this understanding." So what I have come to learn is that Scripture does not contradict itself. There's many places that it appears to contradict itself, but when studying things out, we have to come to an understanding. I had to come to an understanding that the contradiction was with my lack of understanding or discerning, because of the corruption of language and the things that have been taught, handed down generation to generation. So listening to some speakers over the last several years, I really got drawn into Torah keeping, and it's been just the most amazing years of my life to come into walking the festival circuits with Yahuwah, keeping the proper Shabbats to the best of my discernment. And I want to address something that's kind of not where I intended to go, but I want to speak to something briefly. There's several places throughout Scripture where Yahuwah said not to even mention the names of them other gods. And for anyone that has studied some of the topics and knows who the Pope is, he declares himself to be the vicar of Christ, or the vicar of God, in the stead of. And that word vicar comes from a word that we're very familiar with and use almost daily. If you say what day of the week it is, that is where the word vicar comes from. It's from the Proto-Indo-European root of week, and vicar, in the stead of. So when we say excuse me, a day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturn day, such as that, week vicar, we're saying the name of these deities, giving that day in the stead of our Creator. And they've done this to us with absolute knowledge of what they've done. They've put them things in front of us to cause us to be turned from the truth. So I try to abstain from using them terms, and this is new understanding to me why they do this. So I'm just trying to get away from that. So as Scripture says, teach us to number our days and bring our hearts to wisdom. So anyway, back to my topic. I touched on it on my first video, understanding the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So I want to go back, and as I come into Torah, I started studying for myself. I heard many speakers, they would pull a word out of a passage. They would show us the Strong's number and the definition from the Hebrew or the Greek word, what that definition was. What they don't do is take that word, the translation to the English, back into word etymology and give us the original meaning of the word, and go back and we get a clearer picture of what the Scriptures are talking about. So we get many places what we think we know is a long ways from the truth. So I will attempt to paint a picture. This has been years of study for me, and I don't want to read Scripture to you. I don't want to quote chapter and verse to you. You all have a Bible. You have a Strong's. If you think you don't, get your phone out, get your computer out. You have access to the Strong's through eSword, through Bible Hub. And I like to use the website that is Etymology Online. Very, very helpful in understanding these words. It gives the dated use of most words. There's some when the dates are not known, so therefore they're not given, but where they do have dates, it'll give the earliest use or earliest known use of them words. So as I was studying, I come to a place where there was some passages that really just straightforward text level were absolute contradictory, and it just had me in a tizzy. If I couldn't understand these, how could I believe that Scripture was true? So Exodus 20:24, Yahuwah said, "You shall make an earthen altar and sacrifice thereon your peace offerings, your burnt offerings from the flock and from the herd, your bulls and your goats." And then we get to Jeremiah 7:22. "I did not speak to your fathers concerning burnt offerings and sacrifice the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt." And then Hebrews 10:4, Paul writes that it was impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin. Leviticus, we have chapter 1 through 5, then 4:20, 4:26, 4:31, 4:35, 5:10, 5:16, 5:18, 6:7 says, "Make atonement, and their sins shall be forgiven them." So 12:8, "The priest shall make an atonement, and she shall be clean." So we see all these sacrifices, and it says that they shall be atoned for. So many people say, well, this was a temporary covering, and it was. But there's a lot of discernment that goes from that temporary covering to the covering we get through Yahushua Messiah. So Leviticus 5:11, "He shall bring a tenth part of an ephah of fine flour. An omer is a tenth of an ephah, and an ephah is equal to a bath." So if we don't look into them words and understand what them words are, we're not going to understand what Scripture is. An omer Okay, when we get to the counting of the Omer, or the count for the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Shavuot, we go to the counting of an Omer. Well, in Exodus, after they came out of Egypt in the second month, on the 16th day of the month, Yahuwah rained down manna from heaven, and Israel was to go out in the morning and gather up manna. And it said, each man according to his own eating. He that gathered much had none left over, and he that gathered little lacked nothing. So an omer is not this, or a gallon, or a pint, or a quart. An omer is your measure. How much manna can you gather and prepare in a day? How much manna can I gather and prepare in a day? So I can't judge you, or you judge me, or any other person by how much manna we can gather and prepare, but each according to our eating. And an ephah is 10 omers is an ephah, and an ephah is equal to a bath. I'll just run through this real quick. An ephah had to do with the priest's garments, and a bath had to do with the volume of water for the ritual washing. So there's a picture. Why does it tell us, that a ephah or an omer is a tenth of an ephah, and an ephah is equal to a bath? We wouldn't have any use for that knowledge until we get to the place where Solomon dedicated the temple, and he sacrificed 120,000 sheep and 22,000 bulls. Well, 122,000 sheep, 22,000 bulls, it's 142,000. So the brazen sea that Solomon built, that was in the temple court, held the volume of 2,000 baths. So there's the volume of water for 2,000 priests to wash. And when we have the 2,000 priests there, now we have 144,000 dedicated at the consecration of the temple. So it'll take a little bit to discern what that really means, but them numbers are there, and the word definitions are there. So in Exodus 24, Yahuwah said, make an altar of earth and sacrifice your peace offerings and your burnt offerings. So I'll just run through some verses real quick. Ezekiel 20:49. Then said I, Yahuwah, they say of me, does he not speak in parables? Matthew 13:34. All these things spoke Yahushua unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable he spoke not unto them. Mark 4:34. But without a parable he spoke not unto them, and when they were alone he expounded all things to his disciples. So even when he expounded on them, he still spoke to them in parables. He just gave them a little clearer picture. So why speak in parables? If I say a parable, a proverb, similitude, then this is likened to this, then I'm not telling you that that is this, or this is that. It's like this, or it's like that. Then you can't force something into my mouth that I didn't say. You can't accuse me of gaslighting you and saying something that you have to believe something a specific way. We need to search these things out for ourselves. Speak parables. He spoke parables, so let's discern them and understand them. So as I began going through Leviticus, we get into these altars and sacrifices, and it says make an earthen altar and sacrifice your peace offerings and your burnt offerings, and to not approach the altar by steps. So it's not a place that we walk. two, but this carnal body is a body prepared. Okay, we prepare our body to make our offering to Yahuwah. And Paul writes about this. He says, offer yourselves a living sacrifice, your reasonable service to Yahuwah. And then he says another place, to renew, or for a continual renewing of the mind. And again, another place he says, I die daily. So we have that picture of that living sacrifice. So going back into Leviticus, if you take a man bowed down, we have a cubit that is elbow to fingertip. That's a cubit of any man. And we see here that a cubit is my width. And if I am bowed down on my knees, hands and knees, with my face to the ground, then my length is 2 cubits, my width is a cubit, my height is a cubit. That's an earthen altar. So the Ark of the Testimony was a cubit and a half wide, a cubit and a half high, 2.5 cubits long, so that there's room for me to come into the covenant and have, I can be comfortable. I don't have to feel like I'm strapped in there, bound up like a butterball turkey for Thanksgiving. I've got room to breathe. I can be somewhat relaxed. So we have that picture of that humbled man fitting into the Ark of the Testimony. And then when we look at the Ark, or the Altar of Incense that's inside the tabernacle, the Altar of Incense is a cubit square and 2 cubits high. Well, a man sitting up is about 2 cubits and 2 inches high. But when the head is lowered, humbled, and the knees are drawn up, your arms wrapped around your knees, you will fit into that cubit by 2 cubit space. Your head's bowed in prayer. The prayers is the incense. The prayers of the saints is the incense that rises a sweet savor to Yahuwah. So all these things fit into the picture of what's going on in Leviticus. So we start going into the sacrifices, and see if I can. I don't have Leviticus 1 right here. Leviticus 1, he's telling Moses, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, if any man among you will offer an offering, let him bring a bull of the first year before the door of the tabernacle, and he shall lay his hands on the head of the sacrifice, or the head of the offering, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. Okay, so there's the picture right there in Leviticus 1, that the man making the offering is to lay his hands on the head of the sacrifice, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. I am the sacrifice. I am the bull that needs to be offered to Yahuwah. I am the lamb. I am the bull, the goat, the sheep, whatever we're offering to Yahuwah. That's me. Okay, my carnal beast is what I need to overcome and offer to Yahuwah. So if we look at, well, here's the verse right here that I was looking for. I'll read it real quick. Leviticus 1, if any man of you bring an offering unto Yahuwah, he shall offer it of his own voluntary will. He shall put his hand upon the head of the offering. He shall put his hand on the head of the burnt offering. It shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. And he shall slay the bullock before Yahuwah and the priests. So anyway, it's showing us this man offering the sacrifice is each of us. So then further into Leviticus, we get into the pieces and the putting the wood on the fire that's on the altar. or putting fire on the altar, then putting wood on the fire that's on the altar, then put the pieces in order on the wood that's on the fire that's on the altar. That really, like, why does it repeat these strange sounding verses over and over? So I start digging into them, looking at the root words, and the first thing that goes on the first commandment in the sacrifice is to take the skin, the dung, and the flesh and burn it outside the camp. So your outward appearance, your skin, it don't matter to Yahuwah. Get rid of that. Your flesh, your carnality, get rid of that. Your dung, okay, is to offering a bull, right? Get rid of the bull crap. Don't bring that to the altar of Yahuwah. And then we get into the pieces that go on the fire that's on the wood, or on the wood that's on the fire that's on the altar. The first pieces is the 2 kidneys and the fat. Well, we look at the kidneys. I'm pulling these definitions from Strong's. Okay, the 2 kidneys means the heart and mind. You look them up, that's what it says, heart and mind. And the fat thereof. The fat, it points us to an idea of the best parts or the richest parts. And if you go to any butcher shop and ask them for the best fat that you can get from an animal, they're going to give you the fat from the kidneys. It's the purest fat in the body. There's a special name for it. Anyway, that's the best fat in the body, is the choicest part. So we give Yah our best. Then it says to put the liver and the caul above the liver on the fire. So if you look at a liver, it's got creases in it, it's folds. So it means to do over, to repeat. So this is as with the 2 kidneys, there's 2, so that's a reduplication number. 2 means to do again, do again. So the folds in the liver gives us that same idea, to repeat, to do over. So this is where the idea, and Scripture backs that up, that it's a continual burnt offering. It's a morning and evening sacrifice. So me just doing one confession that I'm a sinner, once saved, always saved, that don't cut it. He said offer an offering morning and evening throughout your generations forever. So this is my offering to Yahuwah, that I pour out my soul to him, just as Yeshua did in the garden. He poured out his soul. David poured out his soul. Hannah poured out her soul to Yahuwah. Job poured out his soul to Yahuwah. So we see this idea over and over throughout Scripture. So the liver and the caul that is above the liver, C-A-U-L, is the way it's written in English. And so we look that word up, it means the remnant. When you make an offering to Yahuwah, burn it all. Give it all to him. He's faithful to forgive us for everything. Give it all to him. So then we go on, and Moses was commanded to put a brazen laver, wash basin, between the altar and the tabernacle. So if we look at the different places through Scripture, and I like the King James because it does put italicized words where they've added words in sometimes. And a lot of people say, well, that's just, they put them in there so that we can read it. And well, they did somewhat for draw us away from the right truth. We take the italicized words out of that, and it says the altar, that door of the tabernacle. Sorry about that, just lost my video for a second. So the altar, that door of the tabernacle, computer being weird. And Yeshua told us that our body is the tabernacle, and that he is the door So Yahuwah in Leviticus, I think it's chapter 23. Anyway, he says that I give it to you upon the altar to atone for your souls. For the blood, the life is in the blood atones for the soul. And another place where he talks about the morning and evening sacrifice continually throughout your generations on the altar, he says, I will meet with the children of Israel there, and I will sanctify both the altar and the tabernacle, and I will be sanctified by my glory. So this is not something that was done away with at any time. This is something that goes on continually throughout the generations. That I offer myself a living sacrifice to Yahuwah. And how do I do that? I stay in the Word. I learn the Word. And then when I have that in me, as Yeshua said, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. In another place, he said, lay not up your treasures in earthen vessels. So this earthen vessel, it has to pour out. What's inside has to come forth. So whether it's 1 talent, 2 talents, 5 talents, it doesn't matter. It has to spill forth. It's a well of living water. So the sacrifice has to be offered daily in the morning and in the evening. So back to the laver. The laver was placed between the altar and the door of the tabernacle. So if Yahushua is the door and I am the earthen altar and the laver is in the midst or between, then it has to be inside me. It says to wash the inward parts and the legs. So the inward parts is your mind, your heart, your soul. Wash them with water. Well, how can I wash them with water? The water of the Word, as David said in the Psalms, Father, wash me clean with the water of your Word. So the legs, I don't recall the specific word. Look that up in the Strong's. The legs, it says in that passage that from the knee to the ankle, and it means to kneel, to bow down. So again, we have that picture of bowing down. When Yahushua at Passover, he went into the garden and fell on his face. Okay, Moses fell on his face. Abraham fell on his face. We see all the forefathers, the patriarchs in Scripture, would fall on their face in the presence of Yahuwah. So it's no different today. We fall on our face in the presence of Yahuwah. I wanted to keep this short. I try to keep these videos under 30 minutes. It just gets drawn out. So this study on altars and sacrifices, this is years of study. I'm going to go further into this. I'm going to expound on it over the next several videos. So bear with. Again, I'll put the email in the comments. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll take the criticism. I'm not here to boast upon myself. I'm here to share what I believe to be the truth and to inspire anyone to dig. If you have questions how I come to these conclusions, these pictures, I'll be happy to send you the documents that I've got. I'll be happy to go through the Strong's, the word etymology, and we'll look at these together. If you don't agree, you don't agree. But anyway, they're here to share, so feel free to comment and ask for copies of the studies. And if anybody wants to join on some of our Zoom groups, you can put that request in an email to us as well. We'd be glad to have you. Yeshua said, whatever house you enter into, go in and declare peace to that house and abide there. So I ask you all to come in peace, and we'll abide there. Shalom.